The Personnel Human Services Committee will come to order. Roll call, please. Yep.
Duranzik.
Here.
Krieger.
Yes.
Again.
Here.
Luna.
Here.
Lutz.
Here.
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 Warren.
Thank you. Minutes of August 21st, 2008.
Support.
Been moved and supported. All in favor signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. Public input. Anyone wishing to address the committee, do so at this time. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Daly. I'm just here to introduce myself. I'm a candidate for the state Senate seat. It's coming up in November, the Republican candidate. Just to give a little bit of background about myself, I'm a farmer from down Lapeer County. Of course, I'm sure this board is familiar with the fact that this seat covers Lapeer, Tuscola, and Bay County. So, farmer from Lapeer County, lived there my entire life, been involved in local government at a local level down there for basically 30 years, served on the township board for 24 of those 30 years, and then 6 years as a state representative from Lapeer County. So, been married to my wife Debbie for 40 years. Obviously still farming, so I was very active in the agricultural committees as chair of the Ag Committee when I was in the State House for those 6 years. But just getting active up here in Bay County more and more each day. I'm knocking doors today and we'll be back again tomorrow. Is that a buzzer for me or? Okay, I didn't know. Nobody said I had a limited time, but I promise not to talk only a couple more seconds. But just getting around meeting folks, I pride myself in being very open and very accessible legislator when I was in the State House. Would continue that in the Senate as well. So I know that my cell phone number is available. If anybody after the meeting, I'm going to stay and listen through the meeting. I've got cards here if anybody wants a card with my number on it. It's my cell phone number, the only cell phone number I've ever had. So if I'm successful in November, which I hope to be, I would be accessible to you folks as well. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Anyone else wishing to address the committee? Commissioner Coonan.
Well, thank you. I just got a question for you. Come on up to the podium. Briefly, can you give us your platform? I mean, you know, you're introducing yourself, but you're not saying a whole lot about what you believe.
Right. Well, it's common sense is my main, my issue has always been accessibility and common sense. Obviously, my agricultural background is what put me in the legislature, or what I was specializing in the legislature. I believe that people in the legislature should be people that have lived a life, that have paid taxes, that have supported a family, signed both sides of checks for people so that they have that influence. And I also believe that they should have the ability to access to the people that answer those questions. So in other words, everybody in here has a different background. You bring a different idea to Lansing so that we can represent the people there.
What about the expansion of Medicaid?
I was not in favor. I voted against the expansion of Medicaid when it was passed. So
You get health care through the state.
What's that?
You get health care through the state.
No, actually, I don't. I get health care through my wife as a school teacher. But yeah, the health care through the state's available for legislators, but it goes away once you're done too. There's no health care after the position there.
Well, the only reason I'm asking is if you're going to come and introduce yourself, then
No, that's fine. I have no
I
problem
think
with that.
people should know what one's platform is.
Okay.
So if you are elected, then you're going to probably vote to rescind the expansion of Medicare.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I would want to see what the proposal is, where it goes. Yeah, I can't say that now at this point in time because I'm not going in there with the intention of rescinding it. No, if that's your question. So.
What about right to work?
Right to work, I voted in favor of right to work as well. I think that I would have no problem. In fact, I think if the unions would have came to the table during right to work and said that we would have a vote on whether you could belong to this union or not once every 3 years or every 5 years, I don't think we'd have right to work today. Because if the unions would have put that in place, we would have never passed right to work.
One last question. You're a small businessman. A lot of us are small businessmen here. Do you receive farm subsidies?
There's farm subsidies, yes, to some degree, yeah. Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no one else wanting to address the committee, we'll go under Petitions and Communications. From the County Executive, under 1, appointment to 401K Committee. What is your pleasure?
Support.
Been moved and supported. Executive Barsha?
Yeah, I think most people would remember Deneen Wright. She worked in the
finance department for quite a while, and if you see the enclosed letter in the packet, Jim Willow is kind of overwhelmed, and he wanted to step away, and he thought that Bay County Road Commission would appreciate having a voice on that board, and so he suggested Deneen, who retired from the county and is now the finance director for the Bay County Road Commission. So I just thought I'd give that background in case anyone didn't remember.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by the usual sign. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried. Under 2, reorganization of the Office of Assigned Counsel, seeking approval of outlined reorganization to include the title, salary changes of the Director of Criminal Defense and MIDC Coordinator, retroactive to 9/1/18. Positions filling the B-Camps OAC, administration positions, and part-time USW legal secretary position. Funding for said position to come from MIDC funding. Proposed resolution attached. What is your pleasure?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Discussion. Commissioner Krieger.
Thank you. I was going to look at referring this back to administration, but I think it would be better for us to carry on discussions about issues on how this whole program is going to take place. My concern is for employees that have been with the county for a long period of time, and whether or not they're going to be kind of left out in the cold, being told that their position is going to be moved from with the courts over to administration, and you can reapply for the job that you're doing right now. I'm not happy with how that is going on. I know that this is a mandated program, and I see my lady friend with the big stick is here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have a question for you, if we could, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
So the state is mandating that we do our next phase, and of course you know that I was a big advocate for you when we first started talking about being able to represent individuals that needed legal assistance. So now we're going into phase 2, and we're looking at additional funding to be able to take and have this happen. My concern is with this mandate, it may cause a problem for an employee that's been with Bay County for a period of time. I want to make sure that when this happens, that those employees that would be affected are not going to lose a position, nor are they going to go backwards in pay. So maybe you can help me a little bit.
Okay. This program is a local control program. The state oversees it. You submit plans to us. We oversee it. You design your plan locally. Every funding unit has their own plan. Many of them don't look much like the others. Bay County wrote this plan. Now, the only thing that comes from us with respect to this is that the legislation that was passed in late 2016 and signed in early 2017 puts us in the executive, which means that you can't be doing the work of the MIDC while working for the court. You have to be working for the executive side of the budget, okay? So I suspect that this personnel change is a product of that. How you carry it out is local policy. We have no control over that. We have no say over that, other than the fact that ultimately the person that does this work has to be working for the funding unit and not for the court.
Okay, so my question then is, the state is going to fund this, correct?
Right, state has funded it.
Being that the state sometimes does one thing and maybe doesn't about face and does the other, these employees are going to move from the court to the county, under the county exec. Let's say 2 years down the road, we decide that we're going to go a different direction. And the state says, well, you know what, go ahead and do that because we don't have the money to do the funding. Our policy has always been, if we lose the grant money, those positions are gone. So if all of a sudden something happens with the state and that funding gets reduced or cut, does that mean the director that's moving across and whatever employee or legal secretary comes across, are they going to be without a job? And is the county going to then take up the financial responsibility of making sure that our residents still get the legal help that they have on our dime?
Well, first of all, I can't tell you what's going to happen 2 years down the road. I don't think anybody can.
Okay.
I can tell you that it looks like there's going to be a permanent funding line set up. The legislature has expressed interest in doing that, and I think there's a strong likelihood that that will happen. I can't say that I know that. It's not something that's guaranteed in any way at this point, but that is under discussion, and I won't be surprised to see that introduced in the near future. So that might ease some worries about long-term funding if that happens. As far as how employees will be funded if something happens and something else happens, there's no way for me to answer your question. And I can tell you this, I have every confidence based on the appropriations process that just happened that the state is committed to this, and I believe that they will remain committed to this. This is a constitutional mandate. It was part of a settlement of a lawsuit back in 2013. And I believe that the state's commitment is pretty clear. There was no opposition to this funding in the legislature, none. So that's all I can tell you from our perspective as far as where the funding goes. What happens to your employees and what personnel policies you have in place under any given circumstance is a local decision. And I cannot take a position on that because I have no position to take on that. So your personnel policies have to govern that.
You can rest assured that my position will always be that I will protect the employees that work here at Bay County. So, and I know you can't predict the future, but it is what it is. I mean, I was fully on board with all of this when it first started, and there was some hard feelings with some individuals at the courts when this all came about, because nobody likes change, but I firmly believe the change that we did was in the best interest of the people of Bay County, so that's why I supported you. I'm good for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Kuhn.
Thank you, sir. Let me just, and this can go to staff. This is a grant-funded program. So the funds that for these positions are coming from the state, but if the state says we can't afford it, we're going to fund it anyway because we've funded it in the past, right? We provide health, or we provide legal services to the indigent.
Correct.
And this is a new program which I totally support because I think they're going to get better. But I just want to understand this whole concept. So if that grant funding goes away, we're still paying for that. I mean, we pay for it right now, but we're just doing it in a different manner.
We pay for it right now, and we're doing it in a different manner. However, this new organization that is going to be implemented does include hiring more employees in order to satisfy the requirements that are set forth by the state. So we are going to have additional employees that we don't currently have right now in order to perform all of the functions that the state has determined are necessary.
In this resolution, where there's only one new one, right?
There's going to be one part-time legal secretary.
Now, are there plans to hire more down the road?
Under the first phase, no. There is a very good likelihood that under the second phase, if the state requires there to be a cap placed on the number of felonies that any given attorney can carry in a given month, then we may have to hire additional attorneys in order to deal with that carryover. But again, if the state is mandating that, the state would be required to pay the county the cost of hiring those new attorneys.
Okay, so we have one new hire, part-time.
One part-time new hire.
Which I understand, and the attorney's position, or the director, whatever you want to call it, is getting an increase, which I don't have a problem.
Yes.
And then there's another position that was a non-represented position, and I got some questions on that, that is going to have to be posted and go into B camps, and this individual, whoever it is, I don't care who it is, but they're not necessarily guaranteed to have the position that they've been performing for a number of years.
Correct. What would be required is that this position, in order to be a B Camps represented position, the position would have to be posted for a period of time, and a new job description is being currently created. While some of the same responsibilities that the prior position had are going to be moved into this new position, there may also be additional job requirements that are necessary. I don't know those specifically.
I understand that. Then if that's the case, if they're going to continue to do the work that they've been doing and maybe have some additional work, then why is that particular position going to be paid less
Paid less than the
than what they're
existing
making right
position?
now?
So I can comment on that. The VCAMP recognition clause is why this would go on the VCAMP's contract, because any new position is recognized in the union under certain criteria. But it was a level 5 pay scale on a non-represented pay grade, and it went to a level 5 in the VCAMPs. And it's as close as you can get to the pay grade without giving a large increase to that position. So there's different pay scales for non-represented, and each union contract has their own pay scale. So the level 5 responsibility is the same, but the pay is slightly different because that's what the pay is in the VCAMP's contract.
It's a dollar difference. And the question that I have is then, are people who are not represented paid more to do the same work that they would do if they are represented? I mean, is this an across-the-board thing?
No, it wouldn't be across the board. You have to look at every level is going to be slightly different, and depending on whether you look at the VCAMP's contract, like the level 5 in the steelworkers contract probably pays around $11 or $12 an hour versus in the VCAMPs or the non-rep, that's more
But-
probably 20 to 25.
But my concern is, as an advocate for workers, is if I'm doing something today and I make X amount of money and I get transferred or I get reorganized and I'm doing the same work tomorrow and I'm being paid less, that can't be right. That's where I'm coming from.
I understand where you're coming from. It's just that we're contractually bound to the pay grades in the VCAMP's contract. So we can't pay a VCAMP's employee the same pay grade as a non-rep employee because it's, right, the union negotiates all of the wages and benefits, and they've negotiated the wage for a level 5 position.
Now,
So it's outside of.
has anybody looked to see how this particular scenario that we got here, it's just a little microcosm of the job study that we just had done. How does that fit into there? I mean, I don't know, has anybody looked at it and said, geez, you know what? These 3 positions are, has anybody looked at that and seen how this affects that particular job study?
Well, a job description questionnaire would have been filled out, but I did address with Siegel Waters originally what would happen if quote-unquote new jobs were posted. And they indicated that they'll be giving us a point system if the board chooses to adopt the wage study, and those would be changed at the time. They would be right-sized at the time that the board chose to do something with the wage study when it is finalized.
Now, if, let's say somebody, that this gets passed and everybody has their job. The grant goes away, those jobs aren't going away.
At least one isn't going away because the OAC administrative position was funded before and would likely be funded in the future, but the new position of the part-time legal secretary, for instance, or the next on the agenda is the CFO position to transport for the MIDC.
Well, in this resolution, the part-time secretary goes away, not the other 2 jobs. We have the attorney's position, and then we have the, where is it? The position that's going from non-union to B-camps. That's not going away, because that work needs to be done. So if the grant funding goes away, those 2, I mean, we're going to absorb it. We're providing that service, which we should be. And I don't have a problem with this at all. I just want to make sure if we got something in front of us that I understand, and we get it from you folks, how all this is going to work in all the different scenarios. So my understanding then is this grant goes away, one position goes away, the other ones are going to continue to provide the service that we are approving, which we used to provide before, which maybe wasn't as good as hopefully what we're going to provide in the future. All right. Now, going back to, if you got somebody, a person in a position, I don't want to see anybody, I would think that if you have a job description, you have minimal qualifications that one must have in order to take that position. And I know in B camps, there's no seniority.
That's correct.
So if there's no seniority, nobody from that has higher seniority can take that position. But if that position was awarded to somebody else, you're saying that they have more qualifications than somebody who's been in there for 10 years. That's where we're going, right?
If that is how it panned out, yes.
Okay.
So if the job is awarded to somebody else, they may have different qualifications, but for whatever reason, the recommendation.
So we look at service within that particular, even though there's no seniority, service within that job that one's been doing for, I would hope that that has a lot of weight on this particular position, on how you review it when it is going to be posted and put into B camps, that the weight of 10, 11 years or 15 years or whatever it is has a heavy weight for the individual as opposed to somebody who might have, a higher degree or something like that. That's what I'm looking out for. And I just don't want to see any worker negatively impacted by a job reorganization. Okay.
Commissioner Krieger.
Thank you. So who within administration is putting together this job description? Is it just one individual or are there multiple people?
Essentially, the job description, I would work with Andrea on the duties, and then I would generally come up with the qualifications, and then it gets sent to the union for review to make sure, legally, the qualifications have to meet with the job duties. So you can't say, if there's like a, let's say a custodian position posted, legally, we can't necessarily say we want a master's degree, because it doesn't make any sense. So the requirements have to be commensurate with the job responsibilities.
And so once individuals apply for that position, who then actually says this is the person that's going to be hired to fill that?
Andrea would be the department director, and she would eventually make the recommendation, which then would need to be approved by myself and by the county executive.
Okay, so the county exec has the final say on whether or not the individual that was recommended gets the job?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one question. The job that's being displaced under this proposal, is it essentially the new job, the same job as the one being displaced? Close. That's a question.
Yes, I believe that it will be close to the same job. I think there'll be additional responsibilities because this person will be overseeing some of the coordination and compliance with the MIDC standards. In addition, I think there are additional standards that are proposed at this point to be passed, and some have been passed. So there is an additional screening process that has to happen, I believe, in order for attorneys to be on this list.
And there will also be additional screening of financial eligibility for services and establishment of payment plans and stuff that hasn't been firmed up yet, but it will happen because there was an amendment to our enabling legislation that's going into effect in December. So we're not going to do anything with it until January, and we're not really sure how it's going to gel up. But there will be responsibility placed on the funding unit, which means the county, to determine indigency, and that needs to be ratified by a court. It's unclear exactly what the mechanics of that will be, but our commission is going to be working on that and issuing something on that before probably in their December meeting. I'm imagining that will happen then. So that, whatever that turns out to be, there will be a procedure, there will be some guidelines, there'll be a variety of things that go into that which don't presently happen that will become part of that determination of whether or not a person is eligible to receive these services and whether or not they are in a position to do a partial repayment.
Yes, okay, I'm sorry. When I've been working with Tiffany about this job description, I guess I just want to clear things up a little bit. The responsibility of this county is increased significantly given these standards because we have to report to the state, we have to keep meticulous records about everything we're doing with this grant money, but also how we're overseeing our program, how each attorney is doing. There's a lot of tracking, there's a lot of grant reporting that needs to be done. I kind of feel that everybody wants to say that, wants everybody to agree that this position is the same, this old position is the same as the new position, and I guess I don't see it very much like that at this. I see that there's very similar things to this, but there's also going to be a lot of technical requirements. There's going to have to be a lot of reporting, a lot of coordination with the state, because how many times have we seen Barb here and things have changed? So there's going to be that sort of element in it as well. And quite frankly, we have to get it right, because it has to be, we don't want to be held accountable for any funding or anything like that. The reason that we have kind of like the halftime person that we're requesting is, and we're requesting it for the steel workers, is because that would be more of a clerical position and less of a position that would need to make determinations without always checking with me or the executive.
Commissioner Coonan.
What part of this new position, duties and responsibilities, are not being done in the present position?
Well, there's certain things that are requirements in the job right now. And one of them is, for example, screening for indigency. Okay, the county is responsible for screening for indigency. Right now, there is no rhyme or reason to how that's getting done, or where the paperwork is to do that. Now, this is something that's just that portion of it's going to change, because there's going to be a formula, there's going to be requirements of how you determine if somebody's indigent or not. Now, there's also reporting requirements for training, very likely going to be reporting requirements for how many cases, load studies, things like that. There's going to be, at least the last meeting we had, is certain quarterly reports that show here's our local share, here's how much the grant money, here's where we're at, how much money do we have left, what do we anticipate. And obviously I would oversee that, but a lot of the day-to-day type expenditures would be put in by this person.
There's another whole area too, I think you might be forgetting. Because we're going to be having, under your plan, a contract with attorneys to do the first appearance, the arraignment. I believe this job is the place where all that information is going to be received by the person, and the cases will be assigned to either of the two public defender offices or to the off list. And that has to be, that additional coordination also has to happen.
So that would be an additional duty.
Yes,
Yes.
because there will be a body of information coming in from the arraignment attorney.
Would it be a higher level of work?
I think a lot of the reporting requirements and the accounting requirements that are additional are going to be a higher level of work.
Then I got a question then. You know, you can give, if you create a job description, you can create work from here to doomsday. As long as it's not any higher, then it stays within that classification. If you just said it's a higher level, I don't understand how, if it's a higher level of work, how they're doing it for $1 less an hour. That's what I don't understand.
I'm not in charge of how the B-Camps
Right.
does their
But
payment.
you said it's a higher level of duty and responsibility.
I feel like it is right now, yes.
If it's a higher level, I don't know how they're doing it for less. And the individual that's in there is not doing any of that type of work right now.
Some of the work, but not a lot of the reporting
So-
requirements, none of
So
that.
if we are, and you know, I guess we approve this. If we approve a job to have a higher level of work for a lesser amount of pay, and then we in turn approve a job that you're going to have with more duties and greater pay, that's kind of a hypocrisy there. You know, we could just say, if this particular position is going to do more for less, we could say that position's going to do more for less as well. I guess that's if you wanted to look at it that way.
Commissioner, I think the job description that currently of the non-represented, you asked me if they make more or less than a unionized employee. The job description of the non-represented, I believe it requires a high school diploma and no experience. You know, so the requirements in VCAMs and the requirements in non-represented are different. So,
But the non-representative's making $1 an hour more with less requirements.
with less requirements. I didn't.
Maybe we need to do a job study for the non-represented and see where everybody's at.
And we are doing a job study right now, so.
Because ultimately, I'm just looking at this case here. One gets an increase and has additional duties, which I don't dispute. But on the other hand, the other position is getting, it has more duties and responsibilities at a higher level and getting a pay cut. I have a hard time trying to understand that. So,
Commissioner-
I'll be watching that, wherever we go, whatever direction we go. Because we've got the budget coming just down the road, I think, right?
Yep.
Commissioner Lutz.
So, we have all these additional responsibilities by 2 additional people, and we're adding 1 part-time secretary to help both of them, or
Yeah.
one of them?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's how we submitted our plan to the state.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we forethought all this in our projections to the state when we submitted it, and the state approved it.
That's correct. So we're making these changes and we're complying with the plan that was submitted to the state.
Right, so down the road, more changes come from the state, and these need to be realigned. We would realign our process, and the state would have to approve that again.
You'll have that responsibility of resubmitting the plan annually. The
Okay,
next time that it will come around for resubmission will be approximately the beginning of April. It's depending on exactly when this next standards get approved. It comes, that triggers a filing date, so I can't give you an exact date right now. It depends on when Lara approves the standards, because our commission has approved the next 4 standards. They're at Lara now on a public comment period. Whatever date Lara approves those standards, that triggers 180 days to file another plan for the next fiscal year. And the plan will have to be filed annually for each fiscal year upcoming. So we anticipate that there will be changes on a relatively regular basis as people realize that things aren't working in a particular way it was designed. I mean, a lot of this stuff is new. It's one thing to sit around a table and say, gee, this seems like a good way to do it. It's quite another thing to actually do it, and you learn as you go. And so we know there's going to be change. So there's that set of changes. The other thing is that things happen in a way that you don't anticipate. I mean, you just can't tell. The example that I always give is Mason County, Ludington, which has a relatively light caseload, a small population. About 3 years ago, suddenly a case came up that was a 23-year-old cold case child murder, which really jacked up their expense for their indigent defense for basically a 2.5-year period, beyond anything that anybody could plan. Well, you can't plan for that. What we have in our revised legislation is the ability for a county that's faced with a problem like that to be able to go and retroactively bill into the previous fiscal year. So if you were to bump into something that where you were going to run into some additional expenses that nobody could have anticipated, you can ask for funding retroactively back into the previous year. So we're trying to maintain as much flexibility as we can. And so if job changes need to be made, and I expect that additional job changes will be made. Andrew came to a big meeting this week that we had with attorneys from all over the state talking about these caseload issues. And I fully expect that there will be additional personnel required based on the caseload study that is being completed now. So we are imagining that there will be an ongoing process of revision in each fiscal year.
so this is our compliance to the plan that we submitted
Yep,
that the state approved.
yes,
And these are just dotting the i's and crossing.
correct.
it can certainly be reevaluated, in
Right.
a year to see if it's at the appropriate
And it
level.
can even be reevaluated within the year if things come out in a way that isn't anticipated. For example, these additional duties that Andrea has taken on here, that wasn't fully anticipated when the plan was written. And this is true in many, many of the funding units that I work with, that the administration level was basically underplanned. So we're finding that people are able to find within their budget some money because they're funded as if everything's going to start happening October 1st. And in most instances, everything isn't going to happen October 1st. You got 180 days to make it happen. There's going to be a little lag time that's going to open up some money to do some things that are going to help the administrative end of the problems. So we are accepting budget adjustments on a very flexible basis. So if we need to move money to make something happen, we can. In the event that moving money doesn't solve the problem, you can use this provision I just spoke of, where you can ask our commission to approve something retroactive to the previous year based on whatever planning adjustment needed to be made. So there's kind of 2 or 3 ways to make it work, and we're trying to employ all of them to make this work as well as possible. We're starting a pretty big project. It's the first year. We expect that change is part of the picture, and we're going to need to be flexible about making changes.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Begic.
Just had a question about the part-time legal secretary. What, is she going to be doing any of the reporting or helping the administrator? So is that the case, or is that not what she's going to be doing?
Yes. It would be clerical in nature, and what I anticipated this person to be doing, because when we requested our money, any job that was going to need to be additional, including copying pieces of paper and going from one office to another, we needed to make sure that we covered in our plan to not burden any of the other departments. So this is going to seem really foolish to a lot of people, but getting the complaints, okay, so going to and getting the file and opening up and actually getting the charges is one of our biggest obstacles at this point. So nobody wants to give us their files, but somebody's going to have to do it, and we're going to have somebody go and actually physically get the file, take the information out of the file, and then distribute it to the arraigning attorneys and then to whoever is assigned at that point. There's going to be a lot of forms that people have to fill out. Some of those things are being done right now. Currently, they have to fill out an indigency form. It doesn't have to be determined, but they have to be given that form, directed where to go, and files have to be moved from, one attorney to another. So that's what I anticipated that job mostly consisting of. Not anything that has to do with, providing figures to the state or anything like that. And I anticipate, because I know throughout the grant, this process of submitting, my budget, I initially wanted a full-time person, but I think everybody was asking for everything, so they really kind of limited it. So if that needs to be expanded, then I can go back and ask for more, and hopefully.
We did make her cut back.
Yeah, they made me cut back on a deputy too, so, boo.
I mean, we were balancing, it was a tough balancing act between making sure that the plans were fully funded and also making sure that we were being very careful about spending the taxpayers' dollars. So we had to do a lot of microscopic examination of budgets, and we did.
But if at some point, like Barb said, if we need to go and reevaluate and ask and readjust, then we can do that. So we'll do our best to make it work, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, then we'll adjust it and figure it out.
Thank you.
Commissioner Coonan.
Oh, good, thank you. One last question maybe, and maybe this goes to administration. What is the reason that we are taking a position from non-union why was that a non-represented position under that position reporting to an attorney? Now that position is reorganized. Why can't it still be a non-union position?
So the way that works is when a snapshot is taken in time, when the unions are formed, and the positions that are included in that union at that time have to stay in the union. Any new positions are covered in the recognition clauses of each union contract. So each union contract says all of the positions that are these things, if they're ever posted, have to be in our position, our contract. So I suspect that at the time that that position was created, so many years ago, it wasn't included in the contract, but now it has to be because the recognition clause requires any new posting or new position to be posted and recognized under the B camps or steel workers, or even at the sheriff's department, there's, under the correctional facility officers, that outlines who exactly has to be covered in the future, but.
You never told us that. That's, it's not in here. And I don't sit on some of these meetings that you had. Maybe if there were meetings, I would know that. But if I don't know, if I have some questions, kind of bear with me.
Sure.
But had it stated in there that being that a short paragraph, this particular position based upon the recognition clause is now going to be a B campers position versus a non-union position, but it doesn't say that in here. That's the only reason.
Any further discussion? Bob?
Yes, counties still have a significant financial issue with MIDC in regards to how they're going to pay the counties. It's my understanding initially they'll give us some money, but after that it'll be a reimbursement.
That's what's structured right now.
Yeah, well, Michigan Association of Counties is making the argument that there's nothing in the indigent defense law that allows them to make partial payments and reimburse it, as opposed to giving us the money right from the get-go.
Right. So, I think, if you put a couple of attorneys in a room, you're going to get at least 3 opinions out of them. They've gotten their legal opinion. We're in the process of getting ours. There's meetings being held to try to iron this out. We're trying to reach some kind of agreement on whether or not there will be changes to that distribution schedule. Right now, it's 20% up front and then a quarterly reimbursement. And the next position is they want 100% up front. So somewhere in the middle, I suspect it'll get resolved, but it certainly is, it's probably taking up about 75% of our executive director's time right now trying to resolve this issue. And I'm sure that it will be resolved in the immediate future. So right now, we're operating on the schedule that was originally set. It may change. And I know that, that there are issues left to be resolved there, and I don't know what the resolution is going to be because I'm not one of the people that makes the decisions.
And I have another question. Is public defender or criminal defense, are you using or learning to use on-base?
My office, our office manager, Valerie, our legal secretary, has contacted Joni, yes, because we are limited in space, and our big concern is we don't have space for all these files, and we were told we're not next in line. We would love to. Right now, they said we can get an external hard drive or do something like that to even store our files, but as far as file sharing like that, the on-base, we're all waiting. So we weren't given a time. We would love to. But it's my understanding, I don't believe the district court has made it there yet either. So that's our big paper kind of shuffling right now issue.
You might want to check with a friend of the court. You may be able to get your existing files scanned like they did and then build on that.
That's what we wanted to do, and Valerie was actually at friend of the court before. She came to our office and she loved on-base and wanted it right away and has been trying to get it, and we're I don't know if somebody can put in a good word for us, it'd be great.
Executive Barson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see Kim Reed here today. Kim, would that be all right to ask Kim a question? I was going to ask him, due to your longevity with the court system, if you could give us a little history about the assignment clerk position and maybe shed some light on why it isn't a member of the union in the in the judicial branch and maybe shed a little light on the kind of the current position and how it evolved? To understand this employee's been with the county for 25 years, so.
Yes, Lisa's been an employee of the court. She's worked in different offices. I think she was in front of the court at one point and maybe even circuit court. When the county, this is before I came, but had the buyout and Sandy McKinney, who was the long-term person in that position, retired, Lisa was hired, I think, out of front of the court to this position. In front of the court, she would have been a GELC union member. I'm not sure exactly why that position was non-union from the get-go, probably because it was dealing with the jury systems and then with back then was public defender. And the fact that there are 3 different unions in the court, one in probate, one in circuit, one in district. And I'm just guessing that in reality what happened was it was just made a non-union position to do those functions. I believe Sandy was non-union all along, so that's probably how it has evolved. But yeah, Lisa has been here, as you said, 20 plus years. And what else would you like to know about it?
No, I don't know if anyone else has any questions, but I just thought it'd be helpful to know how it sort of evolved. Sort of seems to be an orphan position over there or something.
Well, only because it wasn't really tied to one particular court.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Kim.
Commissioner Creed?
Yeah, well, seeing that Kim's up here, and you've been in the courts, like Mr. Barsha said, since dirt.
I've been there 14 years now, so.
You've seen how this employee has gone from one department, and as need went to another, and as other needs went to the other. Being around her, would you feel that she would be more than qualified to be able to handle additional responsibilities based on what she's already doing? I guess I'm asking for an opinion.
When Lisa took the position, there was actually another part-time person that helped her, that was in the same role. And over time, we eliminated that position. That was one of them that the court cut. So Lisa picked up all of that work. What Lisa did do, the previous employee did a lot with paper documents. So Lisa uses Cherryland, uses scanning. She improved the reporting mechanisms. She produces many of the financial and accounting reports that you receive here at the board. So to tell you that, Lisa has been very proactive in improving the functionality of that job, and that's allowed us to go down to just her. She certainly has met all the requirements. She does. We currently have to ask income and determine whether they're eligible or not, and if they make too much money, then she has to tell them that they either have to pay it back or they would have to get their own attorney. I know there was also a comment about the fact that in the future you're going to have it go back to a contract again. Remember when we had the Schisler contract, Lisa did all of the billings and reportings and all of that stuff with it. So I will tell you that from the court's perspective, Lisa certainly has the requirements to meet all of these things that she's done and have, currently does. There's been no deficiency there in that respect. She's very accurate, and now I don't know all of the new requirements that Barb and Andrea have outlined today, whether they will be there or not. And I'm assuming that much of the reporting that she tracks today would be different under the new module. So, but I know that some of that's all in development, and even Barb and Andrea probably don't know what that is yet. Having worked with lots of grants myself within the court system, I know that over time more and more reporting requirements get established.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Kim, would she be able to stay in the court system if she wasn't transferred to the executive branch, or?
Well, that would depend on a funding issue, because I'm assuming when you adopt the budget for 2019, you would not give the court's funding for her position there. Am I correct, Bob? That you would be transitioning that to the MIDC budget. So I don't know that there's an option for people when you're doing this transition to move, because you'd have to give us the funding to do that.
But her new position would be funded by the state, correct?
I believe the one that you have, and I haven't seen this, but the one that you were talking about today under the MIDC receives funding from them.
So that would lower your budget if she transferred?
Again, I haven't seen what's been, because...
But it's not completed yet.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, if you were to retain the funding for her position in the court, then yes, we would be able to retain her. I haven't seen that yet, though.
Do you have any resolutions over at the department?
Not currently, no.
Further discussion? Seeing none? All in favor signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Under Personnel Director, we have under 1, the Sheriff, MIDC grant-funded CFO position. What is your pleasure?
So move.
It's been moved, supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Under 2, we have vacancies, Equalization Department, appraiser aide, and from Department on Aging, a bulk delivery driver. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved, supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by the usual sign. Opposed, same sign. Carried. We're going to bring the recreation planning item up at a different time. Thank you for your help on that, Kristen. And then, are there any referrals? Seeing none, unfinished business. New business, Commissioner Lutz.
Yeah, you guys were all sent information about the tuition reimbursement. It's been a topic that's been brought before this table quite a bit. And as you can see from the information, I don't think it's up there, that we've been increasingly putting in more and more money into our budget through the process of budget adjustments, okay? And I thought we should take a look at it, you know, like, for example, in 2016, we've done budget adjustments of $8,000 for that. 2017, we've done budget adjustments of $10,202 increase. We didn't do as much budget adjustments in 2018 because we initially budgeted more money in our budget throughout the county. Up until 2017, we only budgeted $4,000 a year. And then we've done all these budget adjustments. Some, you know, so we've gone, let's go from 2013, we went from a budget of $4,000 to a total expense of $10,000. 2014, a budget of $4,000, and we spent almost $11,000. We spent a little over $10,000 in 2015. 2016, we spent $16,000, almost $17,000. Then it dropped down a little bit in 17 to only $14,000. Now we're creeping back up. This year we spent $15,491. So, I mean, I'm all for people getting educated and moving up and doing everything. I just thought we should take a look. 2019's budget or proposed budget coming up. They were going to propose the same thing as last year, the $12,118. And I thought we should have some discussion. Do we want to initially keep that amount the same as what administration wants to do? Do we want to look at it as a higher number? Do we want to look at it as a fixed number rather than a floating number? So I just like to open that up to the table for some discussion.
Commissioner Cooner.
Thank you, sir. I believe a lot of that is based upon contractual language. And so if it's in the contract, it's in the contract. The only thing we can do is a non-union as a non-union, we can just say no, simple as that. But if it's in the contract, then you have to abide by the contract as long as they're, they're following whatever the contract states. But if I'm not mistaken, a number of the contracts do have that provision in their contract, Tiffany.
That's correct. Almost all of the union contracts do have tuition reimbursement, and the personnel policy follows for tuition reimbursement the steelworkers contract as far as how much you can be reimbursed. They all do contain a provision that says within the budgetary constraint. I mean, there's language in each of them regarding the budget.
Okay. But the only one that we can control is the non-represented. We could probably control them all, but easily is the non-represented. We could just say no.
That's correct. Technically, you could say no if there was no money in the budget.
Right.
Or any of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Krieger?
What I'd like to see happen isn't so much looking at the dollar value as changing some of the criteria dealing with tuition reimbursement. I'd like to see that there's a little more oversight that whatever they're going to take is applicable to the job that they're performing at the time, so that they're betting themselves, which would benefit the county and them. I'd also like to see that in the criteria, should that employee, after getting all this knowledge, decide to leave, that there is some payback that would come back to the county as far as reimbursement for the funds. I don't want to pay for somebody's education to turn around and have them now leave and go into a whole different environment because of what we just paid for. What do we get out of that? I mean, I don't want to be a bad guy, but I don't want to be taken advantage of either. So those are things I'd like to see implemented in the 2019 budget and criteria that comes up when we talk with our friends, with the locals. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Durancheck?
Thank you. I think, as Commissioner Kunis, and a lot of it is contractual, but as we're going into contractual arrangements with all the unions and stuff, maybe we should revise that to like a 50% tuition rebate, reimbursement, so that they have some skin in the game too. So I mean, the county and them, I know there's other places that do that. Maybe that's one of, just another avenue for discussion too. That's all I have.
Further discussion? Commissioner Lutz?
Maybe if I could further expand, I mean, the money that we're spending, even this year, $15,491, if you spread that across all the county employees, that's a pretty good bang for your buck, okay, with the number of employees that the county has. And because not everybody's going to take advantage of this. I just thought it's something that, it's been brought up several times at the board here. We now have all the information. And yes, I agree with a lot of commissioners that future discussions, when we look at maybe contractual language, that we kind of look to streamline a lot of this and get all the contracts to say all the same thing instead of this contract saying that, and that one saying that, and that one saying that. Because there's only one contract that says that, right now, and I believe it's the court system, that says that if they don't stay a year after, they have to pay back 75%. Okay? That's the only one of our unions that's saying it. So there's a lot of things, but that type of discussion has to take place in a different venue. I just wanted to, take a look at it and say, okay, do we want to look at for this upcoming year so we can let administration know, are we going to go with their $12,118 as a fixed number, or are we going to do a lot what we've done in the past, which is, okay, we just increase that number as the number gets bigger. So that was my only thought for bringing it to the table, because everybody, has been talking a lot about budget adjustments. if we tell administration that, yeah, the 12,118 is a fixed number, there won't be any budget adjustments allowing that, then administration has to work accordingly. Or we don't do that, and we go on past practice, which is we're going to approve budget adjustments if people use it over $12,118. So I don't know what, the board wants to do, but I just thought I'd bring it up.
I know our personnel director has something to say. Before she says it, so she can also answer this question. Tiffany, have you seen in your tenure as personnel director any tuition that the county paid that did not go towards a job-related issue that they do, or upcoming? And also, my thoughts are that if we as a employer required from one of our workers that they needed so much training and whatever, we're obligated to pay for that, correct? So.
If we were to send somebody to training, yes, we would.
Right. So have we had, in your tenure, have you seen tuition paid to any employee, or how many times have you seen where that didn't apply directly to their job classification?
So most of the tuition reimbursement that I've seen are management degrees, public administration, and accounting degrees, and it's very difficult not to make a case for any of those to relate to a job here at the county. And I think it's important to remember that we like to, promote from within. So even though maybe a person's position doesn't require a bachelor's degree in management in the current state, it doesn't mean that they don't have their eye on moving up through the county. And as the board knows, we historically have a very difficult time recruiting some of the top level positions, some of the department director, department manager positions, because they can make more in the private industry than the public. So being able to promote from within usually is our best bet with those. So a lot of times accounting, a bachelor's or master's degree in management, accounting, or public administration is not a requirement of the current position in which somebody holds. However, they can all make a case, right, that we would gain from that additional knowledge that they're getting, because they're pretty, they're not going to be supposed to be a doctor or a nurse when they're working in accounting. So it makes sense for them to further their education on that. Yes, we have had people receive education reimbursement and then leave the county because frankly there wasn't maybe a position open. Maybe they were looking to move up, but in the meantime that those positions aren't open, so they start looking other places because now they have their education behind them. But I did want to mention that after receiving some additional information, probably in the last 3 weeks, we submitted our budgets months ago. So I will tell you that there's a very good likelihood that $12,000 for 2019 will not be enough. And the reason I say that is because you do have a handful of employees that were in what's called a 3+1 program. So they were going to Delta for 3 years, and their final year they go to Northwood or SDSU or a university, which is much more expensive. And a lot of them have completed those 3 years and are now on to the final year, which is a much more expensive college. In addition, of course, we had a recent request from somebody that is contractually eligible for it, but I didn't know at the time when we submitted our budget that they were going to be going to school. So I think there's a very good possibility that $12,000 will not be enough as it stands in 2019 if we continue to approve things as we have for the last 10 years. Did I answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on. Any miscellaneous? Commissioner Durante.
Thank you. This week, the governor has declared it Check Your Septic Tank Week. So, hey, we came out of, report just came out, and it's pretty enlightening about some of the E. coli and stuff like that. He's on it. I know we have attended meetings in Lansing on this, so
Maybe we'll see a septic tank code from the state or something. So anyway, if you have a septic tank, get it checked or pumped. This week,
So you want to be a honey dipper, huh?
not my job, Ernie, that's all you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any announcements?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Executive Barsham.
Let me get ahead of it. October 6th from 10 till 2, there'll be another Empty the Shelter event, Bay County Animal Control. And it was amazing, the last Empty the Shelter, I think 31 cats were adopted out. And it was amazing, I think Nick posted on our Bay County website 7 photos or so of some of the kittens that were, or cats that were available. And I talked with Joe over at Animal Control last Saturday, and she indicated people came all the way from Traverse City, Clare. You know, they're not just local Bay County people, so they're traveling great distances, and they were excited to adopt a cat that they didn't have to spay, neuter, or, you know, pay for the vaccinations for. So the Empty the Shelter program is going pretty good. We got another one for October 6th. We got a lot of beautiful young dogs in there, and hopefully we'll be able to adopt some of those out.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn is in order.
Support.
Move support, all in favor, so go ahead and use the sign, opposed, same sign, carried.